Now, it's budget night tomorrow, and we already know there's going to be a significant centrepiece cost of living package, $14.6 billion. The Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, says this will not add to inflation, that it's targeted to help those most vulnerable. Joining me now is Deputy Executive Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, Daniel Wild. Daniel, do you have concerns about whether this cost of living package, this very Labor budget, as the Treasurer and Prime Minister have today said, will add to inflation?
Well, we do have concerns about that. We know that government spending is one of the key causes of inflation. When you've got more spending but your economy isn't becoming more productive, that puts upward pressure on prices, and that's exactly what we've seen over recent years. And more inflation means upward pressure on interest rates, which flows through to mortgages. I mean, where I'm talking to you now in Traralgon, at Hotel Traralgon, talking to local community and business leaders, there's a big concern about rapidly rising energy bills and what that is doing to families and businesses in the area. So there's a big concern about the inflationary pressures that are anticipated from the budget.
Look, we're also hearing that there will be a surplus tomorrow night, but you know it's not going to be, as I understand it, a big song and dance. Although it is the first surplus in 15 years, it's not expected to last. That the built-in costs into the budget will mean that deficits will return in the coming years. Do you think the government should be applauded for delivering the budget to surplus for the first time in 15 years?
Yeah, look, any fiscal consolidation is welcome news, and I think every Australian would want to hear that. But what we know is that the surplus, if there is one, is likely to be on the back of very rapidly rising tax receipts from the resources sector. And don't forget, this is a sector that is the subject to a significant amount of regulation, policies such as net zero, which are undermining vitality in the future of the very sector that's going to be delivering this better budget bottom line. And we also know that there's a lot of what's called fiscal drag. Inflation is dragging incomes up to higher bracket creep. And so that's going to be another tax hike effectively on working Australians. So yes, welcome news in terms of consolidation, but whether this can last for coming years is yet to be seen.
Well, look, I want to ask you just finally a bit more about fiscal drag, because, you know, this is just extraordinary. Real, in effect, real tax increases that everyday Australians are being hit with just through bracket creep, thanks in part to inflation, of course. Will this completely be offset by the stage 3 tax cuts next year, do you think?
No, it won't be completely offset by the tax cuts. We've got, inflation 7-8% that's pushing up the cost of everything else. So if you look in real terms, Australians aren't really going forward. There's a lot of pressures there, from a lived experience perspective. So, look, there needs to be a complete revamp of the way that we approach our tax in Australia. The Australian workers shoulder a very heavy burden in terms of the income tax take here in Australia compared with other countries. And, this is a big issue. We also know that the pressures, the massive increase to migration that's being proposed is also having upward pressure on inflation. So there's a lot of ticking time bombs in the budget when it comes to inflation that aren't being worked out as yet.